Do you guys collaborate with other hospitals, with other medical centers? Can we start to talk about that? How well do we collaborate? How well are we forced to collaborate? What are the models?
Can I mention this?
Sure.
So there are big collaborations. Stand Up to Cancer now is building dream teams, which puts different cancer centers together. But something we just developed with, we just developed a major association with Celgene. And it's 4 cancer centers. It's Columbia, us, Penn, and Johns Hopkins. And it is to work together, which is, again, unusual. But in fact, the funding from this, which will probably, over the next 5 or 6 years, mount up to about $300 million, is, in fact, the concept that these 4 cancer centers working together will, in fact, have much more discovery power than any individual center. And if we are in the position of taking any of those drugs to patients, that consortium has 30,000 new cancer patients a year now. I don't want to sound crass, but in fact, it means we have 30,000 patients among our 4 centers that can have enormous benefits from what we're doing, and with Celgene, which has really turned out to be, they've made the most important drugs in multiple myeloma. And with those drugs, actually, going back 10 years ago, the average life expectancy of a patient with myeloma was 2 years. It's now over 10 years and just increasing all the time for some of those drugs that are coming out. So we're working with a terrific pharmaceutical company and 4 cancer centers. And we see this with Bob Hugan, who's the CEO of Celgene, as a real paradigm shift. And that, hopefully this will be modeled by other centers getting together in the same way.
If I can add
Go
to
ahead.
this? Yeah. So, we collaborate with a number of other institutions, as the basic researchers do. But that's actually not what I want to bring up. I want to bring up something a little bit different. And some of it is to the character of Mount Sinai, which I think is really interesting. So, for example, my laboratory is trying to model triple-negative breast cancer. I'll bring that up as an example. And I have a student who just graduated, and she spent, right now she's working between our laboratory and Google X, out in the West Coast, using their facilities and their computational power to try to understand what are the genes that are driving it. And I have another student, Jen Diaz, who's working up at IBM all summer, the last 3 summers. She worked on their Watson supercomputer. So we have a supercomputer at Sinai, and it works a certain way, and we work on that to build drugs. But she spent the summers up in IBM working closely with them in the Watson supercomputer to try to use artificial intelligence to begin to understand what are some of the drivers in these various tumors. And so not only do we have collaborations with other research institutes, what I think is really interesting, and I don't mean this to sound like a plug, it just is, Sinai is very good at connecting and has made formal connections with a number of technology-based places like RPI, like Google, like IBM, and so on. And as a basic researcher, that has made my job much more interesting in our ability to not just in theory be able to work with them, but actually work very closely with these sort of intellectual powerhouses, even outside of medicine, to try to bring these different approaches to them, and that's been great.